Hello, pursuers. Welcome to another episode of the Pursuit of Happiness podcast. I am your podcast host, Naz Kasimi. Let's get right into the Real Housewives of Atlanta, okay? Atlanta has just been going, and I have not had a chance to really catch up except for today. It's getting interesting. It's getting spicy. Let's start off with K. Michelle, who had emergency surgery for her butt. A lot of people think that it's a BBL. I just want to say I've also had a BBL, okay? And as I like to make everything relatable, I'm just going to talk about how people's perception of what BBLs are compared to what they actually are. So you see people like the Kardashians, and there's nothing wrong with their butts. You see those girls with the really big butts, the really tiny waist, absolutely gorgeous. I mean, I got one because I wanted to look like that. But I only had one round, okay? And if I lose weight, I lose my butt. And on my personal fitness page or my personal pages, because I go through phases where I lose weight, I gain weight, I've said this is how I look with my BBL, which my BBL does not look fake at all. I started off with really like no butt, like I was a fitness butt. And then, what's it called? When I lose weight, I lose my butt. Like it doesn't look like I had a BBL at all. It's just when I put on weight, because it's all fat, right? I have that little bit of the curve, right? To get those butts like the Kardashians and all those models that you see, you need 3, 4, 5 rounds plus ass shots. Those butts that look more fake, like they look like, the upside down tooth that people always say, like it looks like one of your molar teeth. Those are from many rounds of surgery and liposuction, because the lipo will just suck everything in. I also had liposuction on my stomach. I have a little bit of skin. Naturally, my grandma had it. My mom had it. We have a little bit of skin. So I have to really diet down to I'll always have that little bit of skin until I get a tummy tuck on my tummy. But you know what I mean? But I thought, I'm going to go in, get surgery. I'm going to look like those girls. Not at all. Not at all. It takes rounds to get to those rounds, and those typically mean money. Now, the really fake looking ones, like I know a girl that didn't get any BBL, she just didn't have the fat for it, but she got shots. And the shots, no matter if you lose weight or gain weight, they look a little bit more unnatural. So sometimes those butts that you see that look like they just have kind of like 2 round pillows in their butts, and it kind of makes the butt shape look weird, not even curvy, just weird, those are shots. So back to K. Michelle. K. Michelle didn't have emergency surgery for her BBL. She had it for the shots that she put in. And there's 2 types of people that do these shots. There's people that do them illegally and they're not certified. Typically, shots are a little bit more, I would say, black market. They're kind of like peptides right now. You know how peptides, some people sell them. You can go through like your an actual health clinic, which would be more expensive, or you can buy them like off market, like WhatsApp, you know what I mean, and all those like Chinese peptide factories. So ass shots or butt shots are similar, okay? And part of the reason is it's so bad. I've seen people that have gotten them from people that actually do them, and they look great. They're more expensive. It's like literally like $2,000 for a CC. So imagine you want to get your whole butt done, and it takes a couple rounds because you just can't afford it, or you can. Sometimes to get that perfect shape that you want, it's $100,000. Here's the thing with the shots. If you diet down, your butt doesn't change. The fat might disappear, so your butt might look a little bit smaller, doesn't come out as much, but you can't get rid of the shots. The shots are in you forever. And typically, once you get the shots, let's say you get the shots, you don't like the way it looks, or you want more, then you want a BBL after that, they're not going to perform on you anymore. Because what happens is if that silicone gets into your bloodstream, you could potentially die. So it's more of a hazard. Now, BBL surgery already, I've heard, is the number 1 surgery for people to die in. And I'm not a doctor, I don't run the statistics, just from what I've observed, people can die from breast augmentation, from bypass surgery, but because of the amount of women that are getting it, I'm also in these group chats when I was trying to figure out where to go for my doctor. I went to Miami, but when I was trying to figure out where to go, a lot of these girls that do get them done will go to places like Colombia or, but it's not the doctor, I find. I mean, sometimes they go to bad doctors. Of course, there's always bad doctors. There's bad nose doctors. There's bad plastic surgeons everywhere. But this is the problem that people encounter. And this is not a K. Michelle thing. I'm just kind of giving you a little bit of background, and I'm digressing here. But before I get into K. Michelle, a lot of the times that people will lie because everything's done over the phone. And yeah, sure, the doctors that are in Colombia, maybe they just, they want to work. It's not that they're bad doctors. But for example, if you're on a GLP-1, GLP-1 slows down the gastric passing of your food. So everything, your digestion just slows down. So it makes you full a lot longer, along with other health benefits such as like for your insulin levels, et cetera, et cetera. But it slows down your digestion. So typically, if you are about to have surgery, a month before, you have to stop taking your GLPs, anything that slows gastric passing or digestion. And part of that is because you could choke and it could come up because of the anesthesia while you're under, and then you could choke on your own puke in surgery. Now, typically there's an anesthesiologist in the room. They give you air because your body just shuts down. Like when you're in that state, that's why you have tubes in your nose and stuff. There's some things doing the breathing for you. They're checking your levels, your vitals. Sometimes these people are not qualified and sometimes they are. So there's a whole bunch of things that goes with the surgery. My advice is if you're getting surgery, be honest with your surgeon. Are you on GLPs? Stop it a month before. Do you smoke cigarettes? It's just like when you're pregnant. Attempt to stop smoking cigarettes. For me, it was like I stopped smoking cigarettes. Actually, it was then, since I did that I have not had a drink because I wanted to get sober anyways. I've been sober a couple times. That's another story for another day. But finally, since then, I quit smoking cigarettes again. I quit doing all my partying. I quit drinking from that time because it was 3 months in. I was like, I'm not going to drink, because you have to stop drinking a week before, just so your blood doesn't thin out, or else then you could bleed out, right? There's just so many things. The point that I'm trying to make, because I keep digressing and going off into my sobriety journey and whatnot, is that you have to be honest with the doctors because then they can gauge. If you're lying to them and you're like, no, I don't smoke, but you smoked a cigarette literally 12 hours ago, this now makes your blood vessels so much more harder to open, and you could, under anesthesia, encounter complications. So I'm not blaming the person that's under anesthetic. When I got to my surgeon's office, I had to also undergo another set of testing. Like they poked me again. They made sure I didn't have COVID. They made sure that there was no tobacco in my system. No THC. There's so many factors, but typically it's a high death rate because a lot of these girls that want them are still a special type of girl. A girl that's like, well, maybe I can get away with it. And this is what ends up happening. For K. Michelle, she got the shots, and yes, the shots will leak. The shots kind of like corrode your body. It's like a corrosion. You know how like rust starts to corrode metal? In certain areas, if it's not done properly or within certain places, it will start to corrode and leak. And that's what K. Michelle is experiencing. So yes, my freaking heart goes out to her because that's sad. Like you have to deal with that forever. I've seen lots of girls, and mind you, they were pretty extreme girls. Like there was this one girl that looked like Kim Kardashian. She had the biggest butt on earth, okay? Like really tiny waist, huge butt. She went to go get more butt shots, and I'm thinking about it. I'm like, oh my God, had she known that she was going to die from those, she wouldn't have done it. But literally, I think they injected it into her vein, and she ended up passing. I'm going to try to find her photo and post it with this reel in my podcast clips. But you guys, it's a very serious thing. Don't lie. Okay, I'm not saying K. Michelle did. I'm just giving you a little bit more background because people have this misconception about what it actually is. That's the background that you're going to get for that. So K. Michelle goes in, gets the emergency surgery for her butt shots because while she was on the American Music Awards stage, or right before she went on, she noticed that she was leaking. It wasn't blood, it was liquid from her butt. They had to kind of like air dry her, blow dry her to make sure that when she went on stage it was okay. There's no pain, but there's leakage. And there might be a smell typically. She didn't really disclose all that. But yeah, I mean, it sucks. So she's done her surgery. She's good. She's recovering. Does she have to go through this for the rest of her life? Potentially. Is she upset with herself? Does she regret making this decision to get these shots? She does, and you can see it. It sucks. It's something that you have to live with forever. Of course it sucks. But then as we go into the episode, Porsha meets K. Michelle at the nail salon for a Maddie Petty girls' date. And it happens to be Porsha, Cynthia, Phaedra, and K. Michelle. And K. Michelle is explaining to the group about her butt shots leaking at the American Music Awards. And this is that clip that I posted also on my socials and Bravo posted. It creates some contention between K. Michelle towards Porsha because as she's explaining to them, Porsha says, well, was it a miscarriage? Because she's like, some liquid was coming out. Now, when I hear Porsha say this, I don't think that it comes from any sort of place of malice or ill intent. Literally, like, she just looked up, like she was kind of like adjusting her shoe. And then she looks up and she was like, was it an abortion? Because typically you're leaking liquid or fluid, I felt like she was literally just asking a question. Now, K. Michelle becomes offended by this because she's saying that Porsha knew that, and they've been talking, and she knew that it was for her butt. I think you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. Like, and it happens to fall on Porsha. Like, because Porsha was closest to K. Michelle. K. Michelle is just in a sensitive headspace. So I think at that moment, anything that came out of Porsha was going to offend her. So if Porsha hadn't said anything, would it have offended her? Porsha just so happened to ask, well, was it an abortion? And it offended her. I don't think it's bad to ask for an abortion, but I think it goes deeper than that. I think K. Michelle is also going through infertility. And she's experiencing some infertility issues or fertility issues just in general. And so she's trying to go for IVF and getting her eggs frozen. And she's going through all these things, and Porsha knows about it. And I believe they've discussed that maybe they've had miscarriages and they kind of connected through a trauma bond of, talking about their miscarriages. So I think when Porsha asked, in that moment, you could see K. Michelle kind of just brushed it off like it just didn't mean anything. But later on, she probably went home and thought about it, and not on purpose, but just created this kind of story in her head. Like, wait a minute, was Porsha saying that because we've talked about abortions and miscarriages and all of that, and having trouble with fertility issues, and now she brings it up like this, as if to throw a dig. But why would that be a dig? I heard Porsha in an interview say, hey, we're all women. We talk about our vaginas and we talk about things that happen down there. We've talked about these type of issues before. Yeah, it's true. I think K. Michelle is just more offended again because she's going through it. So whatever headspace she's in, she's a little bit more sensitive to what's said about her or to her. So unfortunately for Porsha, she just had to kind of take the brunt of it. And when it comes to her butt or anything else that's going on, it's going to offend her and rub her, and no pun intended, but rub her the wrong way. And unfortunately, again, it just happened to be Porsha there. Shamia's talking to her husband about creating an alcohol brand. Shamia wants to create a rum. This just seems so off. Initially, I didn't really think much of it. I'm like, okay, Shamia just wants to create an alcohol. A lot of people have alcohols, but as we get further into the episode, you realize, do you even know what you're doing here? We see Pinky going to see her lawyer. I love Pinky. Pinky's become one of my favorites on the show. Pinky and Porsha so far. Pinky wants to file an individual... Pinky, Porsha, and Angela for sure. And Cynthia. Pinky goes to see her lawyer because Pinky wants to file an individual bankruptcy, which is just for her stuff that she's signed with only her name on it, nothing to do with her husband. She explains that she was a guarantor for all these documents prior with all her businesses, and her CFO was stealing money from the company, therefore resulting in them being in arrears, and it's hard at this moment to catch up. So if she files for bankruptcy, it might just help relieve her of some of that burden. Some of the things that she's being sued for example, one night at her bar, they had played a UFC fight, but because they didn't stream it legally, they illegally streamed the fight, but then they charged patrons to watch the fight, I'm assuming as a way to save money, but also profit and make money. And because of the fact that it was streamed illegally and somehow by law or someone found out that they had charged people to watch it, even though it was getting streamed illegally. Now she's getting sued for all that money that was collected from people for an illegal stream. It's kind of like a form of illegal gambling, I guess, because you're not paying legally to get it, why are you charging people and profiting off of it? Just like those underground gambling rings. You watch those old school Italian mobster movies, they have those are all illegal because it's not licensed through the government. So you're collecting money from people, but you're not sort of paying any tax on it. It becomes illegal, I love Pinky. She's so honest. And no matter what anyone says, because a lot of people are like, oh, she shouldn't be coming on saying this. Why is she on the show? Why are we having a bankrupt on the show? I even heard on some podcasts that people don't like her because of the way that she looks. And they were black hosted speaking people podcasts, and I'm like, what? How can you say that about your own people? Who cares about how she looks? I never try to go into these kind of critiques or criticisms or reviews of people based on how they look. That means nothing. Like, who cares? Everyone's so individual. Who cares how she looks? I didn't understand that. I rewound that podcast so many times to try to understand what that meant. I'm like, wait, people are actually not liking her because of how she looks? I adore her. The last thing I thought about was how she looked. Although I think that she's a pretty girl. She's gorgeous. She's honest. And no matter what anyone says, owning a business is hard and you will get sued. Anyone that owns a business will say it's just part of being an entrepreneur and owning a business. This is why you have to be incorporated and licensed and all these kind of things and have lawyers so that eventually when it does, in small businesses, it hurts them more when they get sued. But this is why you have all these kind of precautions in place that if stuff like that happens, you're covered. And I think that it's so actually nice of her and profound of her to show us the good, the bad, the ugly of being an entrepreneur. She might be coming into the show going into a bankruptcy, but she's going to come out so much better because any person that comes into the show rich as fuck always ends up being bankrupt by the time that they leave. Great, okay? Even Teresa Giudice, who's one of my favorites, It just happens, So everyone has their season that they're like flying on top and their business is doing well. And everyone has their season when, they're doing bad. I mean, Bethany came into New York with nothing. She left almost a millionaire, it's just a bad way to judge people. But I love the relatability that she's giving us already. She has so much shame already around going into bankruptcy that she even didn't want to tell her husband. I understand that. There's so much anxiety sometimes around certain situations that you don't want anyone to know until you've had a chance to process it. And as time goes on, the sting isn't as bad. Like, it starts to heal and then you're able to talk about it. Typically, I'm the type of person when I'm going through something, I don't really tell anybody about it. I was in adult entertainment. While I was in it, I was off my socials. I wouldn't tell anybody about it. Now I could write a book about it and I tell everybody, yeah, I used to be in it. Now because I'm past it and I've processed it internally for myself. Now it's easier for me to be honest about it and to talk to people about it. Everyone deals with it differently. I just feel bad for her that she has to go through it alone. And, as she's probably watching it back, she's getting all this criticism from all these people. So it's just a shitty place to be in. But as someone that is an entrepreneur, I can honestly respect her honesty when it comes to stuff like that. We have another scene in this episode where Cynthia, Pinky, and K. Michelle meet up for lunch. Cynthia brings up the tweets that K. Michelle sent off on X. And K. Michelle says that she was saying those because she was upset at Porsha about the miscarriage comment. And it seems like that's the straw that broke the camel's back when it comes to K. Michelle with Porsha. Before that, she was invited to the brunch at the Shady Tea Room when Porsha shaded Kelly, and K. Michelle was not sure why she was in the middle of this. She's like, why would Porsha invite me to this and then do this to Kelly? Then K. Michelle asks, what's up with Phaedra? She's like, why is that girl always giggling? And the way she made her, like, how she imitated her was just hilarious. She says that Phaedra's always giggling and making weird sounds. That is kind of Phaedra's signature thing. Apparently, Phaedra... So, now we get into tea. Phaedra had told Shamia that Pinky actually eats meat, but Pinky is offended because she's on the board for PETA. She has vegan restaurants that could impact all her collaborations, endorsements, businesses, etc. And on top of that, she's a vegan. So why would she lie about it? First and foremost, she actually is a vegan. Second of all, she's endorsed with all these things because of the fact that she's a vegan. There's two separate people on this planet. There's people that are actual vegans and they're involved, and there's people that support it and they're involved. She's not just a supporter of the veganism and the let's save the animals. She actually is a vegan. So why? I get how she's upset that it would hurt or impact her businesses. And then they start shading Phaedra. Pinky says Phaedra's been eating dead people at the morgue, and K. Michelle says, well, you can't trust no lawyer who doesn't practice law. Poor Cynthia, honestly, because she's the queen of being neutral, and now she's K. Michelle that was at the brunch with Porsha and Kelly. She's stuck right in the middle. It's really interesting about this, and I want to kind of touch up on this because it comes up in later episodes. This is where the game of telephone kind of gets shady and wonky. I feel bad for Phaedra, as well, because I know Phaedra's come back and she kind of had a short season last season, and last season didn't really end well. But I've also heard on a lot of other podcasts that people feel like Phaedra shouldn't come back. Like, she just got nothing to offer. She's not the same person that she was 10 years ago, but she's trying to do the same things that she did 10 years ago, and it's just not landing like it used to. I think that Phaedra just needs to find her footing. You know, she just needs to find her place. She's kind of just getting used to everybody, and then the cast changes and everything. So she's just kind of like getting in there. But it's right, there's no drama, and Phaedra's always been the type of housewife that doesn't like to bring her shit to the camera. So I don't agree that she shouldn't be on the show, that she needs to leave, but I'm interested to see what she can bring to the show, because just like anything else, if you can't bring it, just, you know, maybe you need to stay off of it, you know? Black meets up with Drew, and as we know, Black is the person that Drew has been in the middle of controversy with. Ralph said they were together and doing things. He was the one that was, at the beginning of the series and the season, she was on the phone with him during the FaceTime at the dinner. He comes to see her. He's a bit performative. I think that he's a bit performative. He kind of came with like this shirt that was open and gave her flowers. And so now I understand why on these podcasts I heard that people might think that he's hired and there's actually no relationship. He does kind of perform for the camera. But I don't really care about Black when it comes to Drew's stuff. I think Black is just, I just want to touch up on that and say that. Shamia and this rum bum that she's creating is kind of embarrassing. She says that she was born and raised in Atlanta, but wants peaches in her drink. That's a Grenada-born drink. But peaches don't even grow in Grenada. Like, girl, have you done any research? Or is it just because you have money that you can go into this blindly and just expect things to be done for you? Another thing that was embarrassing and like a big no-no is how she showed her butt. Like, she like literally like kind of twerked. Oh my God. She twerked a little bit to all the like engineers that were like creating the drinks for her. I was so secondhand embarrassed. I wonder what her husband will think when he does that. Her husband he seems like such a professional, has a reputation to keep type of individual, and then she goes and she does that. Who's going to take you serious when you do that in a business meeting? I almost understand why he's not involved in this and he's letting her take the reign, but at the same time, I wish that he'd just given her some more pointers, because that is freaking embarrassing. It's just not a good look. No one's going to take you serious. Pinky goes on a date night with her husband, Derek. By the way, have I said that I love Pinky? Love her so much. Derek is also so nice, saying that he loves her and wants to be there for her. They got married in 2023, so this is why Pinky didn't want to drag him into her bankruptcy issues, because these issues have nothing to do with him. It's nothing that he's on any paper for. It's everything that has to do with her and her businesses, which he has no say or leverage or percentage in. So she just didn't want to drag him into it. And that's understandable. And it's not like they've been married for 20 years. I'm not saying keep things from your husband, but I understand why. And like I said earlier in the podcast, sometimes when you're going through things, you kind of have to process it yourself first, and then you're able to tell people. But where he comes from, and this is where I find it really sweet, is he just wants to be there for her, and perhaps he can offer a different point of view, a perspective, or some help that she needs. And I thought that was really nice and sweet to say that, you know, because then at the back of her mind, she could be like, okay, well, I haven't told him yet, but I know that he's coming from a place where he wants to help rather than criticize and not judge. So that's nice to know as well. K. Michelle, towards the end of this episode, K. Michelle meets with Porsha and tells Porsha that she's upset about the miscarriage comment. And I think Portia's being honest when she's saying that she wasn't trying to be malicious with what she said, or she didn't have any type of bad intention. I love that Porsha right away apologized to K. Michelle, and I love that K. Michelle approached Porsha one-on-one and didn't go speak behind like the Porsha like what Kelly was doing, you know? She spoke to her directly. Now, Porsha even told her, like, thank you so much for coming to me. This is the beginning of a friendship because you were bothered by something. You came to me instead of going around telling everybody else. And then Kim Michelle was like, nope, I did that too because I was pissed. And she did. She did it to Pinky and Cynthia. But if there's anyone that you're going to go kind of vent to, like, there's venting to your girlfriends or to your friends or to your, like, circle that you trust. And then there's talking shit. Kelly literally went around and talked shit. She wasn't, like, venting. She literally went around and she was calling her Porsha and all these things. You're name calling now. And I know Angela and Shamia are Kelly's friends, but after that incident, when they came to Kelly's store, Kelly was venting as well as talking shit, you know, calling her names. When Porsha went and sat down with Cynthia and Pinky, and maybe production edited it out, but I did not see her calling any type of name to Porsha or being shady. She literally was venting to friends and being like, this is what happened. And it sat with me. It really rubbed me a wrong way. I did not like that. You know? And that's when her friends could offer some advice. Like Cynthia, like, you know what? Maybe she didn't mean it that way. It was better if you talk to her. She'll have a better explanation for it about why perhaps she said that. So, and Cynthia was actually there. So there's a big difference between talking shit and venting. And you can talk shit and vent, but you got to make sure it's to the right people and you got to make sure you're not on a reality TV show, because if that stuff gets out, you look like a shit talker. You don't look like you're trying to come to any sort of resolution. You look like you're trying to create conflict. That could get you in a lot of trouble too, especially on a reality TV show. So, I'm glad that they got to talk before it got like any bigger. Whether that would come into the conversation, any conversation. But K. Michelle is very, very defensive, and I don't know when that's going to kind of dissipate, but it just seems like although Porsha apologized, she's still kind of carrying something, but at least that hard part or that initial step is done and over with. So that's good. Now the next episode that they get into, Pinky Co-Foundation, which is Pinky's foundation, is having it's a nonprofit foundation. She's having a give back event. She raises money for rents for some of the local businesses so that they can cover the rent for 1 month. It gives that local business, typically smaller businesses, a month ahead in paying off bills or catching up, stuff like that, you know. Helps out with scholarships to students and toiletry bags so that people can have the essentials that they need. Perhaps they're low income or just, you know, as a grateful thing. Pinky and Kelly are having lunch. They're both connecting on the fact that they may need bankruptcy to begin fresh and new. Kelly, now, Pinky brings up to Kelly that Phaedra has gone around and said that she eats meat and that Pinky's not a vegan. But Pinky is only a vegan, and rumors like this may ruin her collabs and brands and businesses. And then you have Kelly being so shady at the back of her mind, thinking like, actually, I said it too. But she just couldn't say it to Pinky to her face. So it seems like this is a common trend now that we're seeing with Kelly. She seems to be a bit shady and not forthcoming. You had Pinky right there in front of her face. You could have been like, oh my God, I thought that too. I honestly thought that's what I heard from, or something. But she just completely denied it and let, in that moment, it all be put on Phaedra's shoulders. And I think that's kind of shady. Cynthia's launching a tequila brand with, lo and behold, ex-Real Housewife of Beverly Hills, Adrienne Maloof. So she's invited all the ladies on a trip with her, and they're going to go to Texas. I think Houston, Texas. Mike comes to visit Porsha. He's tall, hot, but I don't think this is going to last. And we know it doesn't because she ends up with Sway because he seems to think that it's a deal breaker. He wants 3 kids. Porsha, I don't think, wants to have more kids. It certainly doesn't seem like she wants to have more kids with him. But yeah, I mean, he's good. He just looks like he's a in the moment type of guy, not like a long-term type of guy, you know? Now, Angela and Phaedra are finally getting along because after last season, when the whole thing happened with Charles Oakley and some person randomly showed up at the year-end event or the year-end party and said, yeah, Phaedra put me up to saying this, that Charles is cheating on you. Angela was the one that had to apologize, but it's okay. She's a bigger person. She wants to move on. So Porsha actually invites Angela and Phaedra to do a spin class with her. And after the spin class, they sit and they chit-chat and they gossip. And Porsha brings up the fact that Pinky is upset with Phaedra because she was told by Shamia that Phaedra has been saying that she eats meat. Phaedra's like, wait a minute, I never said that she eats meat. I said that she used to own restaurants that served meat. So now at this point, it's hearsay, right? Now we're at Pinky's party. A lot of things happen, nothing that's too important, until the point that we get to the fact where Phaedra confronts Shamia and asks her, why are you telling people that I said that Pinky eats meat? Now, this is where production does Shamia dirty, because the flashback that production showed was that Phaedra actually did say that Pinky used to own a steak restaurant that served essentially meat. But never once did she say Pinky eats meat. So see how, and maybe Shamia actually thought, like she's like Amanda Francis. She hears things wrong when she says it out loud and plays a game of telephone. Not that she's intentionally playing it, but, you know, that's just figure of speech. it comes out completely different than what the original thing was. This is how, literally, guys, rumors get started. Shamia just doesn't make you look good because you're kind of in the hot seat these past couple seasons. On top of that, Phaedra tells Shamia, I guess Phaedra was just, frustrated with Shamia and she just wanted to get out all her grievances, that she was offended that Shamia talked shit about her, saying that she was a bad parent or that she had bad kids, one or the other, okay? Again, production showed us a flashback, but this time Shamia wins the flashback because Shamia said nothing about Phaedra's kids or Phaedra's parenting or Phaedra in general. Shamia was on a podcast and she was asked who she would leave her kids with if it's between Cynthia and Phaedra. All Cynthia said was, I choose Cynthia because, all Shamia said was, I choose Cynthia because Noelle lives such a good life. She's very well rounded. She's traveled. At the age that she's at, she's a very well spoken girl. And I feel like Cynthia would really take care of my kids if I left them with her. You can want to leave your kids with Cynthia, but that doesn't mean that just because you didn't choose Phaedra, that it makes Phaedra a bad parent or subliminally say that Phaedra's kids are bad. I think Phaedra took it the wrong way, but she's blaming it. She's saying that Shamia said, like verbally said, well, you wouldn't choose me because I'm either a bad parent or I have bad kids. But I think that anger stems from she's just offended that she wasn't chosen and that Cynthia was. But like, if anyone should know, Phaedra should, that sometimes, look at Watch What Happens Live. Sometimes you put in a hot seat when you're doing press and all these things and you're asked these shady questions. And just because Cynthia was chosen doesn't make two things true, just because Cynthia was chosen doesn't mean that Phaedra's a bad parent or that she's raised bad kids. Not at all. In fact, quite the opposite. They both have raised great kids, It just means that Shamia was asked a question and she had to pick one or the other, and she picked Cynthia, and she gave the reasons about why she picked Cynthia, but the reasons that she gave for why she picked Cynthia did not at all put down Phaedra. She didn't make it a comparison round, like, well, because Phaedra's like this. No, she just said, look at Noelle. She's great. I know that Cynthia would take great care of my kids if I left them with her. That's it. So I think this anger that Phaedra's exhibiting, it comes from a place of, well, Shamia was already talking shit about her to other people, perhaps not intentionally or maliciously, but, she misspoke about what Phaedra had originally told her. So now she's a bit more defensive and she's like, okay, well, if she could say that about something that I said and completely twist it, maybe she thinks this as well. So I feel like that's where it's coming from. And now we have conflict within the group. Okay? Only took 4 or 5 episodes. I think Phaedra's a great parent, despite her kind of like being a little bit lackluster for now on the show, which I kind of agree with the other podcast that said it. She's got great kids. Didn't one just open up his own like clothing line? I mean, they're so good looking. They're so respectful. They speak so good to their mom. She's a great mom. Phaedra, if you're listening, which, I'd be so honored if you did, but please don't think that this has anything to do with you as a person, as a parent, or your kids, because those are great. It's just that Shamia was literally in a position where she had to pick one or the other, and she picked Cynthia. And she gave her reasons for why she picked Cynthia, and none of them were to put you down. She never said, well, Cynthia's like this again, and Phaedra's like this. She just said, look at Noelle, and if I am going to pick, I'm picking Cynthia because look at how great Noelle is. Like, I don't think that in this case, two things are true at the same time. Just because Cynthia was picked and she said good things about Noelle doesn't equal that Phaedra's a bad parent, Phaedra's a bad person, and Phaedra's raised bad kids. It's just, unfortunately, now Phaedra's looking at Shamia through a different lens, so everything's going to be offensive to her, And here we have it, folks. Conflict in the Real Housewives. They did get into it. Pinky was trying to quiet them down. She's like, you guys aren't doing this here. This is a give back event. This is a charity event. You're not going to get into it here. We're going to talk about it in Texas. And then Cynthia was like, oh, hell no. We're not talking about it in Texas. We're talking about it right here because Texas is not going to have these issues. So I'm excited to see them. Yeah, and I said excited to see Shamia and Phaedra sit down and talk it out because they were close enough friends to sit there and talk about Pinky. And yeah, that Pinky owned. It seemed like they were friends. They were on the phone. So it would be so silly if something like this got in between them, So that's my recap of Atlanta. A new episode is going to be coming out in a couple of days. I will recap with other shows. I'm just trying to catch up on all the episodes that I've missed while I was traveling. Thank you so much again, pursuers, for listening. Please don't forget to subscribe, like, share, rate my podcast. You can find it anywhere: Apple Podcasts, Spotify Podcasts, anywhere that you get your podcasts. In the show notes, you will see my socials. Please go follow all the Pursuit of Happiness podcast socials. DM me. Let's chat. I will be doing another Pursuer Questions episode coming out soon. And I'm almost caught up on all the shows. So this coming week, we're going to go back to having multiple shows in one episode rather than just individual. But it's just too much to cover, and I don't want to bore you guys. I bore myself. With that being said, thank you, pursuers. Have a wonderful day, and I will chat with you soon.